He'd thought he'd seen every kind of cruelty this land could throw his way. But when Silas Whitmore crested the ridge that morning, he came across something that chilled him deeper than any winter storm ever had. A woman's face, just her face, stared out from the ground near the dried-up creek, her expression frozen in sheer terror. She had been buried alive beneath his own sky. The morning sun was climbing, casting long shadows across the cracked earth as Silas rode along the familiar path. At first, the odd rise in the dirt caught his eye only in passing. He figured it to be just another heap of stone, shaped by years of erosion. But the closer he came, the more his instincts stirred. The shape was too smooth, too intentional. Then it twitched. Silas yanked the reins hard, his horse snorting and halting fast. He swung down, boots crunching on sun-baked soil, and hurried to the mound. The woman's skin was streaked with dust and dried tears, her mouth split and parched, her dark hair tangled with dirt, and when her lips parted, only a ragged whisper escaped. "Please," she breathed, barely audible. "They said you'd never find me." Silas dropped to his knees. His calloused hands scraped at the dirt around her face without hesitation. The soil had hardened into something close to stone under the relentless heat. Whoever had buried her had made sure she couldn't claw her way out. As he worked, his mind raced. Who was this woman? Why had someone done this here, on his land? Her eyes never left him, wide and glassy with both fear and a fragile flicker of hope. She was striking, even covered in filth and shaking with exhaustion. But it wasn't just her features, it was the pain etched deep beneath them, the kind you don't get from one terrible day. "Don't speak," he said gently, his voice rough like gravel. "Save your strength." But she shook her head, slow and stubborn. "You have to know," she whispered. "My name's Mercy, Mercy Kane, and if you help me, they'll come for you, too." He paused. Dirt caked under his nails and met her gaze. He'd seen plenty of fear in his time, but nothing like this. This was the kind that came from knowing your enemies intimately, the kind born from experience. Silas's jaw clenched as he dug faster. "Let them try," he muttered. Bit by bit, her shoulders emerged, and with them, the bruises. The rope burns on her arms. This wasn't a crime of opportunity. This was calculated. A message sent, but whoever sent it had clearly underestimated who might receive it. She watched him work with growing urgency and something else. A flicker of guilt, as if she already regretted dragging him into whatever storm she'd barely escaped. What neither of them realized was that 3 men sat on horseback in the distant hills, eyes trained on the scene below, and now they were tightening saddles, ready to finish what they started. It took close to an hour to dig her out. When she finally emerged, Mercy collapsed into his arms, trembling and weightless. Silas cradled her gently, feeling the bones beneath her torn dress, the sharp press of ribs. She clung to him like someone falling from a great height. "It's all right," he murmured. "I've got you." But as he turned toward his horse, she grabbed his shirt weakly, desperation flaring in her eyes. "Not your house," she croaked. "They know where you live." Silas froze. "Who?" he asked. "Who did this?" Her eyes darted to the ridge like she expected riders to appear at any moment. "The Garrett brothers," she said. "They found out what I used to be. What I took." That name struck Silas like a hammer. He knew the Garretts. 3 brothers who ruled the territory through fear, intimidation, and violence. No one stood in their way for long. And now, it seemed, Silas had. "What did you take from them?" he asked, although a part of him dreaded the answer. Her face broke, and tears carved fresh lines through the grime. "I was their father's woman. Lived in his house for 3 years. When he died, I thought I could leave with something I earned." She fumbled inside her dress and pulled out a small leather pouch. It jingled faintly. Silas glimpsed gold coins within. "That was my payment," she said, "for everything I endured." He understood. Women out here didn't have many choices. Some made the best deals they could to survive, but the Garretts didn't care about fairness in their eyes. Everything that had belonged to their father, including Mercy, was theirs now. "They found me yesterday," she continued. "Called me a thief, said I'd shamed their name. They wanted to make me an example." As she spoke, Silas noticed a glint on her hand, a ring, buried under the dirt on her skin. A wedding band. "You're married," he said. His tone was Flat. Mercy followed his gaze and quickly tried to cover it. Was married, she replied. He died 2 years ago. I had nothing. That's how I ended up with old man Garrett. The wind shifted, and in it came the first hints of rain. Storm clouds were forming in the distance. Silas looked to the horizon. Staying at his cabin wasn't an option anymore. There's a line shack north of here, he said. 2 miles, hidden in the trees. We can make it before the storm. But as he lifted her onto his horse, Mercy clutched his wrist. You don't get it, she said, voice tightening. It's not just the money, it's something else. Something I know about their father. Silas stiffened. What do you know? She looked at him, terror swimming in her eyes, but beneath it, a resolve that had been waiting to break through. He didn't die from fever like everyone thinks, she said. He was murdered. I saw it happen. The words sat between them like thunder. He said nothing, just mounted behind her and turned the horse north. The wind howled louder now, kicking dust into the air. Mercy sat rigid against him, every muscle tensed like a wire pulled tight. And Silas, he held her close, not just to keep her steady, but because he knew they were riding straight into the heart of something far darker than either of them could outrun. She kept glancing behind her shoulder, every rustle of leaves making her flinch. The canyon's narrow walls cloaked them from distant eyes, but Mercy rode like the shadows themselves were chasing her. Silas rode silently beside her, watching. The tight line of her mouth, the way her hands gripped the reins. What did you see? He asked in a low voice. It took her so long to respond. He thought she might ignore the question, but at last she spoke, barely more than a whisper. It was Marcus, your youngest, she said. He came to the house that night, angrier than I'd ever seen him. Silas's jaw tightened. I was upstairs, but I heard them shouting. Marcus kept yelling about money, said his father was wasting it all, said he was giving too much to the church and to me. Her breath hitched. He called him weak, said he was dragging the family name through the dirt. Silas felt her body shiver beside him. What happened after that? He asked. There was a loud crash, then nothing. Her voice cracked. When I ran downstairs, Marcus was standing over his father with a bloodied poker in his hands. Silas's chest grew tight. His own son. There was so much blood, she whispered. And then he saw me, looked me right in the eyes, and he smiled. Then he said, accidents happen. To old men, and to women who see too much. The trail opened just enough to reveal the cabin ahead, a weather-beaten shack, nestled beneath the trees, a place many had passed through in harsh times. But something stopped Silas cold. The mud around the structure bore signs, hoofprints. 3 sets. They've found us, Mercy said, voice full of dread. Silas yanked the reins and steered, his horse behind a stack of large boulders, his mind racing. The Garrett brothers had clearly done their homework. They'd anticipated every hiding spot within a day's ride. We can't stop here, he said, but we can't keep going either. The horse is nearly done. Mercy turned toward him, her eyes no longer just frightened, burned with fierce resolve. If we keep running, we die, she said. They'll hunt us both now. You helped me. That means you're on their list too. Silas didn't argue. She was right. The Garretts never left loose ends. They'd follow them clear across the territory if it came to that. There might be a way out, she added, reaching into her dress. She pulled out a folded paper. I found this in the old man's desk before I ran. It's a letter. He was writing down everything about Marcus, about their crimes, names, dates. It's all here. Silas stared at the page. Evidence that could end the Garrett legacy. If you were Silas, what would you do? Risk everything to bring the truth into the light, or gamble on an escape and hope the storm would pass? Because the decision he made next would decide whether they'd live to see another sunrise. A low rumble of thunder rolled across the sky as rain began to fall, and then more hoof beats, slow, measured, hunters closing in. Silas slid off his horse and pulled Mercy with him, hiding behind the stone. The hoof beats drew nearer. Voices joined the rain. 3 men. Check the shack, said a harsh voice. Silas's blood ran cold. Wade Garrett, the oldest of the brothers. The tracker, the enforcer. If he was here, it meant they weren't just looking to scare Mercy, they meant to bury both of them. Marcus wants it over by sundown, said another. Mercy tensed. The man who'd murdered his father now pulling strings from behind the curtain, too much of a coward to finish what he'd started. The old man was a fool for getting mixed up with that woman, Wade muttered. Should have known she'd cause nothing but trouble. Silas saw the pain in Mercy's eyes. 3 years of her life reduced to a careless insult. Something inside him stirred anger, hot and alive. The rain masked their breathing, but also meant the Garretts would search harder. No margin for error. Tracks, the third voice called. Leading north, Silas cursed silently. The soft earth had betrayed them. Probably holed up near the mine, Wade said. We'll start there. The voices began to fade, but Silas knew it was only temporary. Soon they'd realize their mistake. Soon they'd circle back. We move now, he whispered. But just as he turned to slip away, Mercy gripped his arm. There's more, she said. Her eyes pleaded with him to listen. That letter, it's not just about Marcus killing his father. There's more in there. A lot more. Silas frowned. It talks about other people. People who went missing. Women who refused them. Men who couldn't pay their debts. They've been doing this for years. Killing. Covering it up. That letter doesn't just expose Marcus, it exposes all of them. The realization struck Silas like a bullet to the gut. This wasn't about one murder. This was a bloody legacy buried beneath the Garrett name. A trail of corpses behind the family's fortune. That's why they can't let me live. Mercy whispered. It's not just what I saw. It's what I know. Silas looked down at the letter. It wasn't just a piece of paper anymore. It was dynamite, and it could blow the entire Garrett empire to hell. The empire was crumbling, and so was the old man who had built his life on secrets. Mercy said he'd finally come to terms with his sins, realizing time wasn't on his side. His conscience had started whispering too loud to ignore, and he planned to send a full confession to the territorial marshal before death claimed him. But Marcus discovered the plan and silenced him before he had the chance. Silas could see it now, the puzzle pieces falling together. The old man's death wasn't from natural causes. Mercy nodded solemnly. The written confession still lay hidden in the old man's desk. Marcus had no clue it existed. Outside, rain lashed through the trees, and faint hoof beats stirred the mud. The Garrett brothers had caught on to their mistake and were circling back. Silas suddenly understood what was really at stake. This wasn't just about protecting Mercy, it was about ending a long chain of bloodshed. The thunder of returning horses grew louder. They were nearly out of time. Silas made his choice. They wouldn't keep running. He would stand and fight. But first, he had to get that confession into the right hands, someone who could act on it. The storm raged around them, a force both hiding and hindering them. As the rain poured like a curtain from the heavens, Silas and Mercy moved through the woods. The thunder covered their steps, but the soggy earth sucked at their boots, slowing them. There's a trading post about 5 miles east, Silas said, steadying Mercy as she stumbled over a slick tree root. Dutch Morrison runs it. He's honest, has ties to the territorial marshal. Mercy collapsed onto her knees, her body giving out after everything she'd endured. Hours of running, fear gnawing at her, and the memory of waking up buried beneath dirt had drained her completely. I can't, she whispered. I can't go any farther. Silas knelt beside her, gripping her arms, feeling the tremble of exhaustion and cold in her bones. He tilted her chin up gently, forcing her to meet his eyes. You have to, he said, voice steady but urgent. That confession could save dozens, maybe more. Women like you who were left with no way out. Men who only wanted to live in peace. She nodded faintly, clutching the folded paper to her chest like a lifeline. That's why I have to make it, she murmured. From behind them came the sound of branches snapping closer now. The brothers were narrowing in. This way, Silas whispered, guiding her toward a narrow gully that snaked through the forest floor. The rocks and brush provided good cover, but as they descended, their path ended abruptly at a sheer stone. Wall too steep to climb, no way forward. They were trapped. The horses drew closer, hooves echoing off stone. Above, 3 figures emerged from the edge of the ridge, silhouetted against the storm-ridden sky, rifles aimed downward. Silas moved instinctively, shielding Mercy with his own body. Though they both knew it wouldn't stop bullets, Wade Garrett's voice rang out above them. "Well, look what crawled into a hole. You've made a hell of a mess, girl," he continued, calm and cold. "But messes like this usually sort themselves out." Silas called back, "She's just a frightened woman. Took some money. Let her go. I'll make sure she's gone before sunrise." Wade laughed harsh and hollow. "You think this is about money? You've got no idea what you've stepped into." Marcus Garrett appeared beside his brother, younger, twitchier, even from below. Silas could see the gleam of unhinged rage in his eyes. "That her?" Marcus asked. "That's the one." Wade confirmed. "She saw something she shouldn't have." Marcus's rifle rose, his finger tightening on the trigger. But before he could fire, Mercy stepped out from behind Silas. "I know what you did, Marcus," she shouted up, voice steady. Slicing through the rain. Marcus froze. His face drained of color, and his grip on the rifle faltered. "You don't know anything," he growled. I saw you standing over your father's body. I saw the fire poker in your hands. I saw you smile when you realized I was watching." The air turned thick with silence. The brothers stared down at her, unreadable fury in their faces. "What confession?" Wade asked, voice low and sharp. Mercy raised the folded paper high, even through the downpour. It was unmistakable, the one where he wrote everything down. She said, "Every name, every killing, every crooked land deal, every missing settler. Your entire blood-soaked legacy." Marcus's fury exploded. He screamed and lifted his rifle again, but this time, Silas was already in motion. He'd been inching toward a loose boulder near the canyon wall. Now, with a grunt of effort, he shoved it hard. The stone tumbled, knocking others loose. The hillside gave way. What followed was chaos. Stones and thick mud cascaded into the ravine with a roar like thunder from the heavens. Silas pulled Mercy tight against the far wall as debris crashed around them, the air choking with dust. Above, the Garrett brothers shouted, horses screaming in panic. When the landslide stopped, a mound of earth and rock stood between them and the ridge, a barrier, rough but solid. Silas didn't fool himself, it wouldn't hold forever. But it had bought them time, and maybe, just maybe, it had given justice a chance. The brothers wouldn't stop. They'd search for another way down the ravine, and when they found it, their fury would be worse than ever. "This way," Silas whispered, tugging Mercy deeper into the shadows of the rocky cut. "There's a cave system back here. It connects to the old mine tunnels." They moved fast and blind, feeling their way along damp rock, every surface slick with rain. Behind them, the angry shouts of the Garrett brothers echoed, distorted by the tight stone walls. Wade's voice rang out above the rest, barking orders. "Split up, search every tunnel. They're close." The caves stretched endlessly ahead, shaped over millennia by water and time. Silas had once explored them as a reckless boy, but the years had blurred those memories. Now, with the weight of pursuit behind him and Mercy's trembling hand in his, he couldn't be sure of any path. "I can't see," Mercy whispered, her voice brittle with fear. "Just follow me," he said, trying to sound confident though. His gut twisted with uncertainty. One wrong turn, and they could be lost forever in the stone belly of the mountain. They clung to each other, every footstep careful, the cold drip of water their only constant companion. Minutes dragged like hours. Then finally a faint shimmer ahead, light. Hope surged in Silas's chest. If that light meant the old mine entrance, they might make it. But as they neared it, hope died. A silhouette stood in the cave's mouth. It was Thomas Garrett, the youngest brother. He held a rifle, its barrel steady and aimed. "This ends here," he said calmly. "My brothers are coming in behind you. Don't even think of running." Mercy's hand gripped Silas's tighter. They were cornered, trapped between Thomas and the twisting tunnels behind them. Thomas stepped forward, voice low and bitter. "You could have stayed quiet, old man. Lived out your days in peace. But no, you had to play the hero." Silas squared his shoulders. "Sometimes being the hero's the only thing a man can be." Thomas gave a dry, humorless laugh. "Heroes die hard." He raised the gun. Before he could fire, Mercy stepped in front of Silas. "Wait," she said firmly. "I'll make you a deal." Thomas hesitated, finger twitching on the trigger. "What kind of deal?" "I'll give you the confession," she said, holding up the paper that had started everything. "I'll disappear. Leave the territory. Just let him go." "No," Silas protested. "That confession is our only proof." But she ignored him, eyes locked on Thomas. "You weren't there when your father died, were you?" she said. "You don't know what really happened." Thomas flinched. "I know enough." "Do you know Marcus killed him?" she asked. "Your own brother? Shot him in cold blood." He stared at her. "You're lying." "I was there," she said, her voice steady. "I saw it. It's all in this confession." For the first time, Thomas looked unsure. "Marcus told me it was fever, that the old man just didn't make it." Marcus lied. "Like he always has." Footsteps echoed behind them. Wade and Marcus were drawing near. Their voices grew louder with every second. Thomas still held the rifle, but his confidence wavered. "Read it," Mercy urged. "See what your father wrote. What Marcus did. What Wade helped cover up." Thomas reached for the confession, never lowering the gun, never taking his eyes off Silas. But just as his fingers brushed the paper, a gunshot cracked through the tunnel. Thomas jerked and fell, eyes wide with shock, blood blooming across his chest. Marcus stepped from the shadows behind him, rifle still smoking. "He was always soft," Marcus sneered. "Just like the old man." Wade came up behind him, face pale. "You didn't have to shoot him. He was still your brother." "Family doesn't turn on family," Marcus snapped, his eyes already shifting to Silas and Mercy. "Now, that confession." Mercy clutched it tighter, her knuckles white. "You killed Thomas, just like you killed your father." "I'll kill whoever I need to," Marcus said, voice cold, "you included." But Silas wasn't watching Marcus anymore. He'd seen something outside, shadows moving, horses, riders, Dutch Morrison. Silas shouted, "You bring the marshal like I asked." Marcus spun around, his face draining of color. "You're bluffing." "Am I?" Silas answered, the thunder of hooves growing louder by the second. Then all hell broke loose. Marcus tried to bolt, but the tunnels worked against him. Wade raised his gun, but Silas was faster. The two men clashed in the narrow corridor, fists in fury, old instincts rising like a tide. When it ended, Marcus was unconscious against the cave wall, and Wade was on his knees with his hands behind his head. Marshal Davies entered, his badge catching the sunlight that now filtered through the cave mouth. "Got your message," he said to Silas, nodding at Dutch. "We rode hard through the storm." Mercy stepped forward and handed over the confession, her fingers shaking. "This is everything," she said. "Every crime, every lie." The marshal read in silence. His face darkened with every line. "This is enough to hang them both," he said finally. "The whole territory's whispered about the Garretts for years. Now we've got proof." As the brothers were dragged away in chains, Silas and Mercy were left alone for the first time in hours. The storm had passed. Light streamed in, warming the cave's rough walls. "What now?" Silas asked gently. Mercy looked out toward the horizon. "Peace," she said softly. "For the first time in my life, I think I get to choose." "You could stay," Silas said, his voice barely above a whisper. "If you wanted, there's plenty of land, a home." She turned and smiled, truly smiled for the first time. "A rancher and his wife," she teased. "If you'll have me," he said. 6 months later, Silas stood in his doorway, watching Mercy tend the garden she'd planted that spring. The trial had been swift. Marcus and Wade Garrett were hanged, their grip on the region broken. Mercy had stayed, and in staying, she'd given Silas something he hadn't dared hope for in years, a future. Together, they built a life on the ruins of past pain. The confession that once nearly cost them everything now hung in a frame inside the marshal's office, a permanent reminder that truth, though long buried, will eventually surface. And sometimes, in the quiet of night, Silas would wonder what would have happened if he'd turned a different way that morning. But then Mercy would shift beside him in bed, and he'd remember some things are meant to be uncovered. Buried stories, waiting for the right hands to bring them to light.